this video, we're going to talk about how to do a 3-needle bind off. So let's start with what we need to have in front of us. I have 2 pieces here that have the exact same number of stitches. Okay, they each have 15 stitches. And I've just knit some little swatches just to demonstrate the technique. Where I would use this is oftentimes when I'm designing a sweater pattern. I attach the shoulders. If I'm knitting bottom up, I'll do the attachment of the front and back at the shoulders using a 3-needle bind off. It provides a really, really neat, clean look without having to actually sew a seam, and I avoid sewing seams at all costs. So the 3-needle bind off is a really good way to do that. It gives a lot of structure to the seam. So it stands up really well. Okay, so on one of my needles, I still have the working yarn attached. This is the working yarn right there. And on the other needle, I do not. I have cut the yarn at the end on this one. The first thing I want to do is I want to take both of these pieces and I want to put the right sides together. So facing me is the wrong side of my fabric. Okay. And I am going to knit the stitches from both needles at the same time. Now note that my working yarn is in the back. That is fine. I just want to make sure that I only have one working yarn so I know which one to use. Okay, now I'm going to need a 3rd needle that is either the same size as these 2 needles or a little bit larger. You don't want to go smaller because you don't want that seam to kind of pucker up with a smaller needle. Let me go grab a 3rd needle. Okay, so I've gotten a 3rd needle that is slightly larger than my 2 needles. Okay, now to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert this 3rd needle. Let me get real close here so you can see. I'm going to insert it like I'm going to knit this first stitch on the front piece of fabric. Okay, and I'm going to insert it through the first stitch on the back piece. I'm going to take this working yarn, I'm going to loop it around just like I'm knitting one stitch. I'm just going to knit both stitches at once. Okay, so now I have one stitch on my 3rd needle and I'm going to slide the stitches off of both the front and back. Okay, now I'm going to do it again. Go in the front, just like I'm knitting, because I am knitting, of both stitches, wrap the yarn around, pull it through, and pull those 2 stitches off. Okay, now that I have 2 stitches on my 3rd needle, now I bind off the first one. Just like a traditional bind off, I'm going to take that first stitch, loop it over the second one, and now I'm back to just having 1 stitch on my 3rd needle. And I will repeat this again. I'll knit these 2 together, slip them off of both needles, take that stitch in the back, pull it over the one I just made. Now I have 2 stitches bound off. And we'll do that again. Go through both, knit them together, take them both off the needle, and bind off. Okay, so I'm just going to do this for the rest of these stitches. We'll speed it up. I'll see you when I get to the end. Okay, so here we are at the last stitch. Now I cut the working yarn on this front piece of fabric, but I did not secure it in any way. So it's going to be a little loose. So I'm just going to want to make sure I pull that tail. I'm going to go through these last 2, slide them off the needles, and I can put those needles to the side. And again, this tail is going to make this last stitch a little bit loose. So I'm just going to hold on to that while I slip this stitch over. Okay, so now that I'm done binding off all the stitches, I'm going to take a pair of scissors and cut that working yarn. And I will just pull it through that last loop that's on my needle to finish it off. And I'll pull that third needle out and set that aside. Okay, so I've completed my 3-needle bind off. Let's look and see what this looks like. So you can see that it looks like I have seamed these two together using a seam like a mattress stitch, but I haven't. I've just knit it and cast it off as I did. You can also see that these lines of knitting match up perfectly. So it looks really neat. It's really strong, but it gives structure to that shoulder seam in a way that like a Kitchener stitch would not have given it structure. And we want to make sure with our sweaters we are really making sure that we have structure at those places where the sweater can stretch out. And so that is the 3-needle bind off.